about my two dogs, my two working dogs,
Yeah?
Tigger and Fred. Tigger was a Kelpie, a brown Kelpie,
Actually, he
And
wasn't
he had
brown,
a-
he was silver.
silvery brown. He had a
Silver
character of his
is-
own, a great personality.
We
And,
bought him as a little dog as we came through
Woodenbong.
Woodenbog one day. We'd stopped there for
His father, the male owner assured me that he had the very top breeding in him. I called there sometime later and spoke to his wife, and she muttered something about dingo. Probably
maybe
dingo.
a dingo involvement.
Dingo involvement, so it was a mystery. But Tigger was a great personality, a very, very energetic dog, and I trained him myself, so that didn't say a lot for his how well trained he was, but he never lacked an enthusiasm for the job. His enthusiasm would extend to such extent that if he'd get the opportunity to grab a cow's tail and swing off it, he would.
Just
And yeah,
a
but
laugh, a real laugh.
toward the end, when he got older and not so game, it was a bit of a menace in the fact that you had Tigger with you and a cow and a calf. The dogs found that the very safest place to be was behind me, so I'd suddenly find myself between a very angry cow and a dog that was taking cover behind my back. And I had to duck quick, or otherwise I'd be in the line of fire.
You didn't feel very safe,
I
Paul.
didn't feel very safe. And then there was Fred. Now, Fred was a dog that Pop bought just before he died. He came down from central Queensland in March, and
Wendy brought him to the farm.
Wendy took him down to the farm, and he was just sort of getting established when Pop died. And he was. Then I went overseas for a couple of weeks on our planned visit to Europe, Mum and I, a week after the funeral. And Fred was left behind, and he didn't stay. He went up and lived with Deb Foster.
Oh, that's
And Deb Foster, our neighbour, was getting very concerned that if I didn't come back soon, that she'd getting very attached to this dog. And anyway, when she did hand him over when he came back. Fred was a quieter dog than Tigger, not quite the. He was equally enthusiastic, but just a bit different.
He was a gentle-natured dog.
More gentle nature. Everybody loved Fred,
He was a sweetheart.
and
Actually, I've got a lovely picture of
he
Fred.
had one white eye and one black eye. We used to call him the Phantom of the Opera because of his appearance. He too was very enthusiastic at the job and had been trained to some extent, but he was very nervous. If he ever picked up a stick or anything like that, we understand that the training method was to beat him, and that had gone against him in his training. But otherwise, he was a good dog.
So that wasn't a training by Pop, that was...
No, he was supposed to be trained when
Yeah.
he arrived on the place, and but we suspect that it might have been the most skilled type of training. Yeah. Anyway, Fred even though he was the older dog, died last. He got very rheumatic. We had to eventually put him down.
How old
because
was he?
about 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Had to have him put down because of his extreme painfulness with his rheumatics. Whereas Tigger had an impacted bowel, and he had to put
That's
him down because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
okay.
one had the snake bite?
Both of them had a snake bite. Or Fred, yeah, both of them had snake bite. As far as we know, Fred was very, very ill there, for a few days. And that was I was there that time. Then another time when Max and Pam were looking after them, Tigger came down with a mystery condition that they put down. It was probably snake bite.
Yeah,
And, they thought he'd gone, and anyway, we came back for the weekend or wherever we were, and Tigger was still with us, and he eventually.
He was fitting badly, wasn't he? And frothing at the mouth,
Yeah,
Max
well,
was saying, so we
yeah.
just put it down to snake bite.
Well, that was similar symptoms to what Fred had, was frothing or sliming at the mouth, and just
Knocker.
very, very ill. But anyway,
Yeah.
the two dogs was an era at the farm that we started with, we inherited when we went there, and eventually went. And after the two working dogs had finished, I worked the cattle without dogs.
Was that
Sometimes
harder?
wished I still had them when I want to move things along, but overall, I was just as happy without them. Yeah. Even though they were great personalities while they were there. Oh yes, they were advertising, wanting people to increase the seed of this new variety of low THC marijuana. And I replied to the ad just out of tongue in cheek, saying I had expertise in producing new crops with my career with the Department of Primary Industries. I had good soil and I had equipment and access to irrigation. And all I got to that reply was a very sort of non-committal call from somebody in Virginia, Brisbane I think it was, saying, oh, they weren't calling for applications for this for 12 months and so later. Well, what the heck were they advertising for? I don't know. The whole thing was a bit weird. They must have smelled a rat that I was only trying to set a trap for them anyway. So, yeah,
Well, I was telling him he ought to try it, you know, and he sort of wasn't too sure.
No, I'm very suspicious that any attempt to promote any marijuana or hemp product, or just part of the campaign to, what do they call it, to legalise marijuana production and have everybody smoking the dope.
But lots of people are doing it and reckon they're getting good results, though, don't they? That's what I
Is
hear.
that with the oil?
Yes.
Oh well, yeah. It's
with the
supposed to, I've heard it cures 101 complaints, and when they start saying anything is so wide, so wide and broad in its respects, in its effects, it must be something a bit fishy about it. That they're trying to promote it for other reasons other than just to be a palliative or a curative for whatever purpose.
I think it just eases the condition that you have. I think that's my understanding of it.
Maybe it does.
But yeah, I'm not an expert on it. Put a number in front of me, I might be able to do something for the balance sheet. But marijuana's not my strong point, Bob. We were good friends back in Albion days, which is in the late 50s, early 60s.
Early
University.
60s.
Early 60s, was
Yeah.
it? Yeah. And we went to Albion Church and we knocked around, and with Warren Lane was another one.
That's right.
And I think Brian Timms was there at
Oh
times.
yeah, he used to come.
Was
here.
this you at university days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And then Jan came along. She came and she ended up
That's your
living-
sister, Jan.
Yeah.
yeah. And she ended up living at Laurie Elm's place. I just remember Jan sitting there one day outside the ABC, or the Book and Bobble House in those days, and she was trying to learn German. I tried to learn French, but I didn't really do very good at French. I got a C. But, you know, it's interesting, when I went to France a couple of years ago, I hadn't spoken French for probably 60 years.
Yeah.
And when I went, little bit by little bit, all the phraseologies that I'd learnt when I was in
university.
Kedron High School,
Yeah, Kedron High School, yeah.
I ended up, they just came back one by one.
Yeah.
I tell you a funny thing though, man. One time I wanted some milk and I'd forgotten what the word for milk was. You know what it is?
Lay.
Lay. Oh! You spoiled it!
Sorry.
So anyway, we're in the shop and Chris had a thumping headache and the fella dug out some aspirin out of his own. He had a packet of his own, so she gave Chris a couple of aspirin and then we wanted some milk.
Might have been Mario.
And I couldn't get it. And I've got to tell you, the louder you shout it, the less they understand.
That's right.
So in the end, I got to this guy and I said, milk, and I couldn't think lay at the time. I said, moo, moo. Oh, lay. And we got our milk. But I found the French I'd skipped France for many years because I thought they were always rude, but in reality they were probably the kindest and the nicest people
That's
you
right.
could find.
Dad's always felt the same, like all
I
thought the same thing.
totally accept them, particularly if they knew you from Australia. It
exactly.
just carried the world. But it was good. Out in the countryside,
Yeah.
English not spoken so much, but in Paris, everybody spoke English. And as long as you know, pardon monsieur or madame or whatever it was.
If you attempt to
you
speak
try,
French, they love
they
it.
love it.
Long
Yeah.
way.
As an Australian, we
Simple
didn't know
play.
French
Yeah.
Yeah.
at all, and then you'd ask a question in English and they'd reply in French, and I just slapped them around the head. It really annoyed.
Yeah. I went to McDonald's once to get some salt for the chips. Not real good for you, but I like salt on the chips. And I wanted to get salt. And I couldn't make any progress. Nobody helped me. So I turned around, I put my hands and said, "S'il vous plaît, monsieur." And somebody knew it and gave me the word and I walked off with the salt.
There you go.
But no, they were good people. They were good people, and I would go back to France. I loved it.
Yeah,
We
right.
did all the trip around the First World War battlefields and down to
right,
Normandy,
Yeah, wonderful.
and then
Yeah.
we went to Andorra. Wanted to go to Andorra, which is a province of France. But I got it a bit muddled. There was also an Andorra in Spain, 500 kilometres further south. Long way. And when we discovered that we were in the wrong place, after booking it through hotels.com, we thought, oh, it'd be okay. It was cheap. But then once you booked, and then they won't give you money back or anything. But anyway, we managed to get it deferred, and we made our way all the way down to Andorra. And I said to the guy in Andorra, "How many people make this mistake?" "Oh," he said, "everybody." He said, "That's our main source of income." It was the most expensive room we had the whole time we were travelling. Yeah, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Remember not the motorbike, you had a motor scooter.
Motor
Was it
scooter,
a
yeah.
Vespa, wasn't it?
No, it was a Diana.
Diana, that's right. Yeah.
Unusual.
And we go out sometimes, I'd sit on the back seat and he'd drive me home, and that was good fun.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
How long did you have a motorcycle for, Dad?
Oh, I only had 1 year, I think, and then I got the little Morris Minor. No, sorry, I had that scooter long in that few years. It wasn't until the final year I got the Morris Minor. Yeah.
When did you get the scooter in?
Well, I went to uni with that. Or soon after I started uni,
Yep.
first and second year, and I took it to Gatton College for the third year. And the end of third year, we had the Morris Minor.
Okay.
The Morris Minor that Dad managed to buy for me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I had a guy in my class at Kedron High School called Andrews Crummins, and he went and did the same course as you did.
Okay.
Did you ever come across him?
No,
It doesn't matter. It's a big place, and I just I've always meant to ask you is whether you'd come across him or not.
It might have been a year or two after me.
Well, he'd be after you because
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
70, nearly 74.
Yeah, no,
so
we
he'd
didn't.
be in a different class.
Yeah, we didn't. Well, I didn't anyway.
Yeah,
because-
fair enough. Guy, what did you tell him?
I said, you make me very angry.
Ooh,
And who
you
was
almost
this
sound
guy?
angry.
Yeah, he was. He was. I believe he was.
What was his occupation, Bob?
Trying to throw drugs onto me.
Oh dear.
You know those boys, those what they used to call them lane boys, they've ended up in jail. They finally rounded them up, and
The lane ones?
the lane boys.
So he used to be in the lane.
They're always in the lane, you know, and I could never understand. After
Well,
all,
so
it's
was I with
illegal.
the
It's
line.
illegal, you know. How it just
And in the trial, they said, oh, he was photographed 19 times selling drugs. Why they waited 19 times before they had to pound? I don't know. Well, I suppose some of the first memories of Ron to having anything to do with him was up on Bunya Mountain, where he was taking a meeting up there of people not that long after Glacier View in the 1980s. Yeah.
Were you at the Bunya Mountains
But
that
I
day?
was up at Bunya Mountain, yeah.
You came, I can't remember seeing you there, Bob.
The scrub turkeys were
Yeah.
coming very close and
They
sharing lunch
were
with
listening?
Yeah, they were listening. They were
It's
wrapped with
important.
the story, and yeah,
Is that right?
there was
Was Sam Ferguson there that day from Gundawindi? Because I remember, Anyway, you know,
I remember him, but I don't know whether he came there.
King of Roy. What's that? What was
The
their
King
name?
of Roy family and the family, Robert and what's Thais? Not Thais. What's the name?
Felsman.
Felsman's the one,
yeah,
yes.
Felsman.
Yes.
But also the pilot man, the aircraft man.
Thompson.
Thompson, yeah, they were there.
Were they?
Yeah,
Florence.
How old would
Florence
you,
Florence.
and Rob.
yeah.
Florence and Rob.
Rob, yeah.
Yeah.
how old would you have been then? How long ago we were talking?
1980s, you would have been very young. I think
Oh, yeah.
you came.
Yeah.
I think you were there with Diane.
In the Bunya Mountains, I think I've
Bunya
got
Mountains,
photos
yeah,
of
yeah.
them.
What a great spot.
Yeah.
And so you were based in Warwick then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I think Wendy had gone to. She had gone on duty of on the Sabbath, and I took would have taken the 3 girls. I know.
Don't remember Bronwyn.
I don't know whether Carmen was there.
Yeah, Carmen was there.
Was
yeah,
she?
yeah. I remember putting something right up close to Carmen for the scrub turkeys to come, and you put her further away. She said it was too close. She didn't like it.
She was there, then you remember. That's an accurate recollection of Carmen.
Yeah, I chucked it over to see if it would go up and get right next to it. She said,
Teasing you, probably teasing you.
I was testing the water to see whether it
Yeah.
go that close, but Carmen said.
Yeah, we had some, you know, they were really wonderful times.
That was
weren't
only
they?
the one meeting you had up there, wasn't it? Yeah, it must have been.
I
Yeah.
think, isn't that funny? I was probably, I know that I was new to the job then and didn't know what I was doing. And so I,
Was winging it.
I, even though now and I'm finished, I still don't know. But
Well, actually, the first meeting I think we had was at the Crest Hotel or in.
I wasn't part of that.
Weren't you? You weren't there at that one. No.
No.
That's right. It was
But probably Noel was
Noel and
Oh, Smuts?
yeah,
there. Yeah.
another
Smuts
fellow,
there?
Edward, somebody
Calvin Edwards.
Calvin Edwards. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you were part of that.
Did you know Noel is back here in Australia now? He's building a little house for himself at Kalula Cove.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, his wife died and he's just,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm going to see him next weekend.
Okay. Yeah.
What are can I just ask, Ron? What are some of your best memories of Bob?
That
Well,
might be good.
look, I can't think of any specific things about Bob except that he was always. I don't remember the time you mentioned there, but he was a recurring face at all my sort of
Kept coming
most of the
back.
gatherings that I was part of, and I got to know him slowly over that time, and him and Wendy, and then even better when he retired. And I remember a good day we had down at Nimbin, probably
You came and visited on the farm.
might be I don't know, was it 10 years ago?
Oh yeah, yeah. And you and
The banners came.
That's right.
Yeah.
Four of you.
And,
Yeah. That's right.
And I think we went out and had pizza in the city of Nimbin.
Oh, okay.
So that was a nice time. I remember that well.
Yeah.
And we sought assurances that they hadn't mixed any substances in the pizza.
Any.
Pizza. So,
Any mind-altering substances?
Okay.
yeah. So that was
Yeah. Oh, very good.
yeah.
That's wonderful.
And then in later years we used to meet every week for a while, and that every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Yes.
We enjoyed the
Tweed
time.
Heads, and later on it was at Pottsville.
Yeah.
Until
Yeah.
Ron pulled the pin on that one, and so we transferred from there down to.
Bob's always been somebody that I always knew. He probably knew more than I knew when we were having in our meetings. You know, he's
I don't know about that.
got an intellectual repertoire that's probably a lot bigger than mine. So
Yes.
it's good to have him there to keep me honest.
That's one of my reasons for doing these videos is that because whenever I had questions growing up, I didn't go to an encyclopedia. I'd ask Dad
Yeah.
because he had a great general knowledge, but he was pretty impartial. He was pretty fair-minded in his approach, and yeah,
Okay.
he
Yeah. So we had a good time.
yeah.
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 Very good.
It's good.
And you married Diane and James, didn't you?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
married.
And he also buried Mama, Pop and Mama.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I forgot.
When the names came up for who was going to bury Pop,
Yep.
yeah, because we had different elements of the family, we had to. But I suggested Ron, and Mama was happy with that, and Max was happy with that, and Jan was happy. So yeah.
So good.
Hard to get all the Brinsmeads.
So, your dad was Tom, wasn't he?
That's right.
That's
That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's right.
So we've had a little bit of involvement with the family, and
Yeah.
on and off.
You
So
have.
It's all been good.
Yes.
Very nice.
It keeps coming and coming, and you just sort of like, I've got to just stop that.
Yeah.
And it helps you do that.
It does, yeah.
And it's,
Yeah. Mindfulness.
yeah,
It's very
been
important.
Yeah.
We've started doing, Rude and I do on a Monday morning an hour yoga with private session with an instructor just down across the road overlooking the beach.
Yeah, it'd be lovely.
It's amazing. It'll be terrible when we'll have to move it indoors a bit more as it gets hotter, but it's so wonderful. We've been spotting whales. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's,
Such a good way to start the
Yes.
week. It really is. Yeah.
yeah, yep.
I just thought that why do the men get all the video? I thought, you know, you never know. It's such a wonderful catch
Stop
up.
talking now.
Yeah.
That you got the camera
I know.
on.
I just thought I'd capture a little bit. That was all. So yeah.
Stopped in on a hotel now.
Mum's
So
no.
it was good. And
It's sort of, over the years, you've always supported Ron and that
Oh,
too. You
well,
know.
he was just it was such a blessing, G and you know, it was such a blessing to us, wasn't it, Bobby?
we better go.
G and
now,
you.
I'm sort of-
Anyway.
Yes, well, I've certainly been to some interesting parts of the world, and it's very hard to say what impressed me the most. I guess the trip into the USSR or the Soviet Union during the Cold War was very interesting and challenging and whatever, and to see the Kremlin and other parts of Moscow, and also then to go over to Leningrad and to see what was known as then as Leningrad. It's reverted now to its old name of St. Petersburg, and to see what life was like there too under the Soviet regime. It was certainly a very interesting part. But then in the natural world, well, our tour to the big park in California with Jan and Malcolm and the two little ones. Yosemite, yeah. Couldn't think of it for a second. Yosemite was absolutely a magic time too. Going there in the autumn, just when the first snowfalls were appearing on the mountains, the animals that normally live up in the mountains, including bears and coyotes and what have you, were coming down, and we saw some of those. And yeah, that was a very fascinating place too.
What year did you visit the USSR?
1974.
Okay.
Yes, as I say, it was still very much in Cold War times. We'd gone across Europe through Germany, saw Berlin with the wall. The wall was still up then in 1974, and then across East Germany into Poland, which was very much in part of the Iron Curtain, but also see that even though that it was Poland particularly was a part of the Soviet communist bloc, they certainly weren't friends with the Russians. But that was all part of the scene.
Was
yeah.
it all quite depressed then, like in?
Oh, very depressed. Yeah, going behind the Iron Curtain, everything was just just stagnant. Their agriculture was years out of date and very untidy because it was all being done by workers who got paid whether they did the job properly or not.
Yeah.
Unskilled. And once when you went into or come out of, to compare the agriculture either side of the border was just, well, it was completely no comparison. So it was obvious as anything that the communist system just wasn't working.
Yeah.
Likewise in the shops, whereas in Western shops they were just full of glitz and advertising and signs and everything to attract the consumer, which is what we think gets in our way. But when you in the Soviet Union, everything was stacked up in very untidy piles, and you had a staff that specialised in not trying to be helpful, because the more helpful they were, the more work they got, because everybody would go to the ones that were being helpful.
Yeah.
And if you were unhelpful, as a counter jumper, you'd have a pretty easy ride. You wouldn't have much work to do. Yeah, it was fascinating to see the system. It was very frustrating to try and do business with them.
Yeah. And where else did you visit on that trip? Like, it was a 3-month tour.
Yeah, well, we visited right across Europe, down in southern Europe, Italy and Austria. That was northern Italy and Austria were magnificent places for scenery. Down in the French Riviera for a day or two, and across France back to England. We also we spent time in Scotland, and also in England proper, England and Wales. Hired a car and travelled around.
Yeah.
And then we came home via the United States and had a bus ticket tour round across. Started off in Western, in California,
Yeah.
and caught a bus south, and then east as far as Texas, and up through the centre to see the Midwest, back across Canada to Seattle, and then down the coast back to California again. Yeah,
Wow.
We did all that in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's a big trip.
It was pretty heavy going, and we overstretched ourselves a bit, I guess. But anyway,
You crammed a lot in.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How much, I'm interested, how much would that whole trip have cost back then, in the 70s?
Oh, dear, oh dear.
Do you have any idea?
Well, the airfares were enormously expensive compared to today. You probably pay about the same in airfares as you would today.
Okay, yeah.
Even though the value of the dollar has changed so much. But as for the rest of the costs, well, the 2-week trip around on the Greyhound buses was $50 each for
Is that
2
in the
weeks
US?
travel. Yeah, it was what they call America Pass Greyhound bus ticket. For $50, you were able to go wherever you wanted to within 2 weeks in the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
It was
And
quite,
what about like your Trafalgar tours? That you
I can't remember how much they
those are
were. No, I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
We had booked $10 a day in Europe or something.
That was your budget?
No,
Yeah,
there
that
was
was-
a little
yeah.
book that put out
yeah,
$10 a day in
yeah,
Europe.
you could
You could survive for
Survive.
$10 a day.
something like Lonely Planet type guides
Yeah.
were Europe on $10 a day sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
That's for people that really want
Budget.
to do it very cheap.
Yeah, yeah.
We weren't quite as bad as that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it for a minute and start again just so
Sorry.
just so that our files not, no, it's just because the file size gets so big, I don't want to try to,
To me, that was significant. To what-
yeah,
that's a bit-
$10 a day.
Yeah,
it's like
compared to
$100 a
what
day. It's
today-
probably like,
You know,
trying
when we went to England, Lyndall, just a real,
What was
quick
it?
meal was expensive. Something like $30 or something for a pizza. It was shocking, I remember.
really, that was when you went there.
Yeah, when you were there with us that
Oh
time.
yeah,
Oh.
later, years later.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. Sorry, in the
In Britain, in London.
late 90s, yeah.
It's just changed, prices just changed so much. Yeah.
And what about the other continents that you visited? Which, what ones stand out, or which you've done a lot of travelling with work?
Yeah, well, I've had another trip at the government expense in the United States, Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil in 1978. That was an interesting trip. So that was concentrated on agricultural subject.
Mm-hmm.
And then another trip, Wendy and I were sent to India for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we saw what colourful India is all about. Grinding poverty to wealth and opulence in some quarters, side by side in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
What about the man who wanted to marry off his sons to our daughters?
Yeah, the arranged marriages that you wanted to organise.
Anyway, that was an interesting sideline. And then another trip I did, the government expense again, was to Cairo, where we had a conference, and then up to Syria, and the big research centre, that international research centre just down of Aleppo. I was only thinking about that this morning. I presume all that is just battlefield now, and those facilities, expensive facilities there that were provided by international money, has just been overrun by IS and in a state of complete destruction. And I understand that the programs, fortunately, were shifted over to Lebanon in time to save what we hope is the majority of the research programs and the records and the germplasm. That is the seed that they.
What sort of programs were they? Research programs?
Well, they were working on dryland crops, but I was interested there because they did a chickpea program on but they also were growing fava beans and I think barley. There's probably some wheat work, but not much.
Yeah.
Any of the type of crops, lentils was another crop they were working on. Yeah, so we were.
And what do you remember Syria being like?
Yeah, well, Syria was an interesting place because, especially the closer you got up to the what do they call
Euphrates? No?
the Tigris Euphrates River. It's the fertile crescent of that part of the world, and it better rainfall, very very badly eroded, of course, but was still more efficient farming than what you see further south in the old areas of Israel. And those, when I say the old areas, that's the areas that before the Israelis got busy and tried to reclaim a lot of land. Anyway, but up there, and the people were lovely, really. The Syrian people, very very friendly. All wanted to make friends with you, and very happy, easygoing people. Very much like the Lebanese are that we know in this country. And, we had a couple of families in Warwick of that descent, the Tanners, and there was that other old fellow that everybody loved, but I can't think of his name just now. He had a business just down from the Tanners.
Where were the Tanners? Was that the fruit shop?
Fruit shop.
Yeah, yeah.
They were Lebanese.
Yeah, okay. Fruit and vegetable.
Yeah.
People in Warwick. That reminds me of, so didn't you and Mum visit Israel? Did you visit Israel?
Israel, we visited Israel twice.
Yeah, so when did you go to Israel?
Well, we went there in 1974.
Yeah.
And also...
On that same trip?
On that trip that we had to Europe.
Yeah.
And we also visited in 2000, just after Pop died, because Mum had a conference in Greece.
That's right, yeah.
I had to stay back for a week to sort the business, the estate business out a bit. And Mum did a tour of Greece, which I didn't do. But when we got over there, she finished the conference. Well, she was at the conference, I just hung around the centre for a few days. Then we flew off down to Israel and had another trip of Israel. And that time was interesting because we had a tour with a group of Americans. They were all American and they were all Jewish.
Jewish, yeah.
Whereas the previous tour had been, It was a Christian group led by a Canon Busby, who was Anglican. There were Catholics, there were Anglicans, and strange to say there were Adventists. There was another doctor from Western Australia, him and his two kids were Adventists, and of course Mum and I, so that it was a pretty diverse group, yeah.
What was Israel like back in 2000?
Yeah, well, it was a big difference between what it's like in the 26 years since it's been away.
Yeah.
The most telling was the fall in water levels of the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee as a result of the Israelis using water extensively for irrigation and taking it out of the system, and consequently the water level was way down. So what the future those bodies of water, of course they're enormously deep, there's a lot of water in to get them right down, but what's going to happen there I don't really understand.
So a lot of Jewish people moved to Israel post the Second World War, is that right? Or
Well, that's right. They
reclaimed
their
homeland? Or?
People have come from, particularly from Eastern Europe, because there's been a lot of pressure in Eastern Europe against Jewish people.
Yeah.
When I say Eastern Europe and the old Soviet Union, they're still, Jewish people are still heavily prejudiced, even in the United States. They try to deny it, but people will do business with Jewish people because I think they'll make money out of it. But now, one Jewish woman said to me, she was surprised to with us because we took them for what they were just people. She said, but she said she always felt in America that there was a barrier between them and other people who were non-Jewish.
Oh, well, there still is today.
Well, that's what you're saying.
Very much.
So a lot of them, relocated to Israel.
That's right. And if they haven't, they put some sort of claim in Israel. They visit there a lot, and they send a lot of money into Israel on aid projects and that type of thing. And consequently, particularly money from the United States, if it wasn't for the Jewish people in the United States, Israel wouldn't be a fraction of what it is today.
Okay. Yeah. Stop.
Visited him and his wife when we were in Israel, and he was growing 5-corner fruit under shade. I found that really fascinating, and he was sending the fruit off to China, was it?
No, he sent it up to Europe, darling.
Well, he was sending it off somewhere, but you should be including those sorts of stories.
Oh, okay.
You know, a little bit of human interest there.
Yeah.
Oh well, I guess I'm not. Maybe Dad might be feeling a bit stiff, but that's where the interaction between the two of you can help, and that's what I was saying. Like with when other people are around you, liven up, you become a bit more of a storyteller, Dad.
He was a professor from the Hebrew University that I met out here in Australia when he came over for the Pulse conference, and when I got to over there, I looked him up, and he had planned to fob me off onto one of his staff for the day, but he found at the last minute that staff member who he asked to look after it had been called in by the army. See, Israel, virtually everybody over there remains a member of the armed forces, even though they've finished the military service and have to have finished the military service and then go and get a full-time job. They are then liable to be called up at any time for any sort of training or emergency that might arise. And that fellow had been called up, and he said he apologised to me later for not being there. He said, but when those fellows called, he said, you go, you don't.
Yeah.
So anyway, the professor then looked after us for the day. The wife, she looked after Mum, and he looked after me. And
Lunch with them?
Sorry?
You had lunch with them?
Yeah, we had lunch with them. Yeah, they.
I found it very fascinating.
Was this in Israel?
Yeah, in Israel. Yeah.
Where were we? In Jerusalem, I suppose.
No, just out of Jerusalem. Yeah, so, sort of the suburbs of Jerusalem. And he put us on the bus then to go back to. No, No, so at suburbs of Tel Aviv, where it was not Jerusalem, yeah.
Okay.
And he put us on the bus at the end toward late afternoon to catch the bus back to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You went to the big bus station, there's buses galore, of course, you've got no idea which bus to get on, and all the signs are in Hebrew, not in the script is different and everything.
Yeah.
And he put us on the right bus, and then we got back to Jerusalem, because we were staying in Jerusalem, that's where our hotel was. Yeah. But, no, he'd showed what change was like. I think he said he may have come there with his parents. He had his origins were Eastern Europe or Russia.
Yeah.
And the first industry they got involved was dairy, and everybody started dairying. There was no money to be made out of dairying, so the next crop they grew was oranges. And then everybody grew oranges, so the next crop they grew was avocados. Then everybody grew avocados, so the next crop they got onto was this calambola or five-corner fruit, and he was growing them and using his expertise to do grafting with them and whatnot, and growing them under shade cloth and sending the fruit off to Europe as a
So in terms of places that you visited, and obviously you're always interested in agriculture, what stands out the most in terms of of all the places you've been to? What was the most interesting from an agricultural perspective?
Dear.
I mean, I know, for instance, you were pretty impressed with what they did in Banawe, in the Philippines.
Yes, I was. Yeah, well, I was surprised at the trip to Asia only last year. The standard of agriculture is very good in Vietnam and the Philippines.
Yes. Yeah.
Which stands in stark contrast to places like Africa and where they're very slap happy with how they do it, and
Their work ethic, obviously.
work ethic and their desire to do things properly, make them neat and tidy, and have
It's interesting.
it was an amazing difference, and use adequate fertiliser to keep the bugs under control and everything. But that was very impressive. But I suppose that in standard agriculture and the extent of it overall, you'd have to say the United States up to the Midwest. Well, it was just very top quality soils, good climate, good rainfall, and everything else, and things grow perfectly enough through there.
Yeah. What areas are considered the Midwest?
Midwest.
Yeah.
Well, everything south of Chicago,
Okay.
down to about the centre part of America, and then extending up into a bit further east from Chicago, then a long way west is big, vast plains of the Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys covered a lot of ground in 2 weeks. That was crazy.
Quite ridiculous, yeah. But anyway, I had ideas of sampling what the best of America had to offer, and we didn't have very long to do it.
Yeah.
And at the end of a tour that we had to push to do it.
Yeah.
It's a safe place.
So tell me about the stories that you remembered from Reg's funeral yesterday, Dad. What did it bring up?
Oh, well, the first thing we did was catch the limousine. No, it wasn't a limousine car. It was Bob's car, driven by his wife Irene. Picked us up here around 7 o'clock, took us to the airport, where there was a gleaming white jet of whatever type, ready to take us down to Sydney. And Judy, I presume, who was the benefactor in providing the funds for providing such luxury, and had 2 well-dressed pilots. I guess you take the second one as a spare, you know. We crawled onto the plane and into our seats, and Judy dutifully seeing that the 2 Bobs were strapped in, one because he's a bit obese, and the other one because he's frailty. And we sit down, and the jet takes off, and we're cruising along over the Tweed here, up over the farm. I was able to look down and see the mountain top and the coffee and the Nimbin and so forth. Couldn't quite get my head around seeing where the actual farm was. It was right underneath the aircraft. Anyway, we were heading down, partway down the coast, and I thought, oh, well, I'd turn around and look up into the cockpit because I was facing backwards to see what was going up there. I was even going to take a photograph. The moment I did that, one of the pilots says, "Is it all right? Did I want something?" No, I didn't want anything. But anyway, at that moment, he proceeds to crawl out over the whatever the control thing into the little narrow passageway down towards us. At this time, John is recalling it at considerable length, one of the family tales of misdemeanour or whatever, to misbehaviour, misdemeanour that they were up to, and it was just the story was going on, and the pilot who came down was crouching down because you don't have much height in the thing, crouching down in the alleyway, about to get serve breakfast for us. He didn't realise that John was talking, and Judy up with her hands to say, just hold a moment. And John goes on and on and on, and I don't think he even realised he had somebody waiting. So eventually he finishes his story, and the fellow very nicely gets up, pulls the two tables out, comes out with great big platters of sandwiches and fruit and whatever have you, enough to feed the army, not for older people who probably already had some breakfast. I think John reckoned he'd had breakfast, as had I. Anyway, so we weren't too long, and we flew into Bankstown Airport, which was good. It was closer to the venue, and at Bankstown we had a chauffeur in a limousine waiting for us in a upmarket Audi car.
Audi rather than Aldi.
Audi, that's it.
An Aldi limousine. That'd be an interesting limousine. You have to drive it yourself. It's a smart car.
Yeah, there would be some difference between Audi and Aldi. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. And they're both European, never mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, two extremes of two ends of the spectrum. But anyway, so we got carted over to the place where and we had a little bit of trouble finding it because Rookwood, I think, is the name of the cemetery area, and it's huge, as big as a suburb. There's just cemeteries and graves in all directions. About the only people I saw, a couple of people wandering down the track towards us, and I say, "Hey, that's Thomas and Anne," So they were lost. They were trying to find where it was. Anyway, we eventually found ourselves to the South Chapel where the funeral. Here's the white lady, funeral ladies waiting there, and Max by this time turns up and says, "Oh, got shares in this company, White lady funeral company." He said, "What do you think of it?" I said, "Look, Mum's talked about having white lady for me," and I told her.
I didn't say anything.
And what did you tell her?
I said, somebody told me about white lady. I don't know who it was.
Could have been Diane.
Might have been Diane.
Yeah.
I said, not of my sweet life.
Oh,
if you
it wasn't me.
It must be Diane. It was somebody.
Because Karen was buried by white.
Yeah, I just.
Trust you to be blaming
What's your take against them, Dad?
Oh, it's just too feminine.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway.
Nothing against the white ladies.
No, nothing against them. They try, but
They've got beautiful hats.
Yeah, their hats are
beautiful
good.
hats.
That's about all.
They
Anyway.
look all right, I
They
suppose.
do look good. They do.
Yeah, they're not quite smart enough in the clicking their heels for my liking.
Oh, okay.
The
fair
more
enough.
military style would be better. But
Okay,
anyway.
so you prefer a 10-gun salute, Bob, than a send-off?
Anyway, so we
Very good.
marched into the funeral, and that consisted of just Bernie took charge of that, and
Here it is, Bob.
family charge.
She found it in the bottom of the bag.
No, it didn't. It was in this little side bit here.
Anyway, we
Should have been
we had the funeral, and then we piled back into the limousine again over to Bernie and Prue's place, which was about, oh, it was very close. Actually, at the funeral itself, of course, Max and Mark and I say the Tom Brinsmead family was far outswamped any other family group, you know.
They were.
Yeah,
there was
most
lots of other-
numerous. Yeah. There was
Well represented.
Oh, well represented.
well represented.
Yeah, so
there
there
was
was
Max
lots of-
and Mark
Yeah.
and Pam and Thomas and Anne and
Oh wow.
And Max and Pam.
He said that.
yeah, Max and
But
Pam.
there's but his sister Pam as well.
All right.
No, Sister Pam wasn't there.
Oh, wasn't she?
No, she
Oh,
wasn't
I
there.
thought you said
No, she wasn't there. Mark, and Thomas and Anne, and Felicity, that's
Oh,
right,
Felicity
yeah,
was there.
Felicity was there too, yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
And so we all, and they'd come by car and taxi, or back, Mark had actually walked. He came down,
You mean to say he walked from Albury?
he walked from the,
From the station.
to the railway station.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he got off at the railway station, he asked a woman where the rock would. Oh, it's a long way from here. She said, it's about 2.5 kilometres. He said, well, I've got 2 hours to do it. And he said, so.
So did he catch the train up from Albury?
No. He was in Newcastle because Tammy had gone to Newcastle for an interview for,
Oh, right.
for work. And he said, the girls get up at 6 o'clock. He said, so I got her to drop me down the railway station. He got to jump on the train, got down to Sydney in plenty of time, and got off at Strathfield and changed the to Lidcombe or somebody. I think he got off at Lidcombe, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do?
And he walked to the station. But anyway, all of them they were all looking for trying to catch lifts over to Bernie and Prue's place, and there was no room in our car. We had just
Your limousine was full. Had avocados that were being kept cool in the car.
That Aldi one.
That Aldi, yeah, the Aldi limousine.
That's so funny. It's a cheapskate.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, well, it certainly wasn't a cheapskate car, I tell you that. The interior of that car was beautifully set out,
Bob's first time in a Lear and a...
polished up. But anyway, we got over there. When we got there,
Jai.
it's not a big house, and however they're going to, even though it wasn't a big crowd, however were they going to accommodate, this sort of crowd in an ordinary suburban house. Anyway, they managed to do it, and then I got into the main dining room. There was glasses laid out, and then there was one bowl of sandwiches. Well, I thought that'd be Prue all over. Everybody would have one sandwich, 1/4 of a sandwich each, and that'll be lunch for her. That was a bit unfair, but anyway, I thought, well, this crowd being Brinsmead, I'll soon make short work of that. But then there's this bearded character started wandering in and out with hors d'oeuvres and one tray and another tray and another tray and another tray, and then trays of fruit and trays of more trays of sandwiches, and food just kept coming. Apparently they get this character who's a, what do you call it?
Caterer?
A caterer, yeah. He's a single caterer. He had, I think he had long hair and a huge beard, but unlike the nimble lot, it looked as though
It
he
looks
washes
clean.
it. Looks as though it's clean and it's washed occasionally. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, he buzzed in and out and served us all, and we
Had a good time
had a
reminiscing.
good time there generally, and then about 1:30, Judy starts saying, Bob, I think we've got to go. So she sent me over to the car. Was that when I think I said, yeah, I think that might be when I went over to the car and found the driver asleep. Anyway, I climbed in and then the other old fellows, John and Bob, of course, she pushes one in the direction of the car, and the other one would wander off. It's like trying to get chooks into a chook yard, but get one, and the others kept wandering away. And she finally got us all in and tripped back to the airport, back to the car and off to the nearby airport and climbed aboard. And then after we'd been eating all the time at Pruden,
Yeah.
here she comes out with these two huge bottles again of cheese and biscuits and some fruit on one tray and a whole pile of fruit on the other tray. I don't think the four of us, of course, we had no chance whatever of eating a fraction of it, but just everything in abundance as far as Judy was concerned. And we landed and we were back home here a few minutes after 4 o'clock. Left at 7, back at 4 o'clock. Great day, yeah. Well, the story is this, that there was mention made on the flight down that Robert had his shoulder out and he'd had to have a shoulder operation.
Yeah.
And he said something about, and it suddenly jerked my memory because I can remember when it happened, well, soon after it happened, because John had come over to the farm at Glengarry and told us about the incident, how his shoulder had come to be out. And I said, so when a mention was made of it, he said, oh, you pulled your shoulder out. I said, yeah, with the assistance of one of your older brothers, meaning John. And nothing, well, he was poker face look at both of them. But then John did make some mention of it later. But what had happened was that John and Robert were having a scuffle, and it got out of hand, and Robert really lost his block. And he thought at one stage that he was stronger than John, and then he'd go and clean him up once and for all. Anyway, and he was rustling him inside, and then John said, well, I got outside, I realised that he'd had me set up because there was pieces of equipment laid out around the place that if I tried to get away, he'd clobber me. So he said, I just had to go along with it. But eventually I pulled his shoulder out, and he really screamed then, and said, John said, shut up, I'll come and pull your other leg. But anyway, John did mention the story yesterday, that yes, he did take him outside, and he saw right nearby was a shovel, and he knew darn well that if he tried to get away, he was going to get clobbered with the shovel. So
By Bob, is that
by
right?
Bob, yeah.
Simple.
It was fair dinkum.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. But John told us at the time. He said, I'd always experienced that if I gave Bob a proper hiding, that he'd take it out on some of my possessions I valued, something, clothes or car or something like that.
Yeah.
So he said I couldn't let him think that I'd beaten him. I said I had to let him think he'd win. That was the way he operated. That was the type of behaviour that went on between those two. But they didn't seem to want to remind of that too much yesterday.
It's interesting because John talks about seeing these two, and he sees himself in Cade, I think, but obviously he was the older brother in that situation. But yeah, so
yeah. Well, John himself had older brothers.
Of course.
Noel used to John said every time he used to walk past Noel, he'd duck because Noel would give him a clout and say he was toughening him up.
Yeah. It's brothers for you.
That's older brothers for you, yeah.
I can see you. Go for it.
Yeah, so we had Linda Melcherick over this morning, and we got onto the subject of Pop and their dealings with Pop before he died. They were it took 3 years for their contract to go through because it depended on them trying to sell their house down in Nimbin, which incidentally they never sold. But anyway, they were very embarrassed about it, and Linda confronted Pop one day down the field and said, look, we're very worried. He said, don't worry about it, it's all right, everything's going okay. Yes, she said, but you might die. And Pop said to her, and you might die, he said. That can happen to any of us, because he thought he was immortal. But anyway, the time came, the event came when he did get carted off to hospital in an unconscious state. He was taken down to the emergency ward here at Nimbin, and he was taken by ambulance into town, more than unconscious. I think that his heart stopped beating really, and he was completely anaerobic. And when they got into town, into the emergency department in Lismore, they didn't want to bother too much, but here he was, an 85 come 86-year-old man that, he's had his days not worth reviving, virtually, and Linda was quite incensed about this, and she wanted more attention paid to him, and everything, they weren't taking too much notice of her until they said something about his son. And I thought, no, they weren't bringing me into it. No, it was Max, Dr. Max Brinsmead. As soon as they found out that he was the father of Dr. Max Brinsmead, they had to take quite a different attitude to looking after him. She said it was amazing how quickly their attention to him changed at that time. So it went on, of course, and then she went on to talk about that she had to confront Mama, because Mama was one of the first ones into the hospital there, and you were
Mum and I.
and Mum and you, and Linda said Mama come to her, and I think it was the first time she'd ever met Linda, and Linda said, your mother was a pretty formidable person, and the first thing she said to you, I believe you were in a business arrangement with Tom, my husband. Linda didn't think it was the most appropriate time to be talking about that. And all Mama was wanting to do was to reassure her that the situation for that business deal would not change, that it would be honoured. I think Linda was fearing that it might have been all off.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was as she said, she repeated, she didn't think it was really an appropriate time to be calling, but of course that'd be Mama. She'd have to think of those things there and then at that time. Yeah, well, you ask about my high school years. Well, we were living at Glengarry at the time, and there was no access to high school from Glengarry by bus at that time. And, there was a sort of a high school arrangement at Tweed Heads, but Mum and Dad weren't keen on that. It was either board me in Murwillumbah or send me off to boarding school. Because I had heard about these agricultural high schools in a school magazine that we used to get that were extolling the virtues of these places, and that sounded great. When the suggestion was first put to me to go to one of them, one down in Tamworth, well, I thought that was a great idea, to go off to a high school where you not only had, you learned the normal high school subjects, but you also lived on a farm and had a special opportunity to study agriculture. So away I went, taken down to Tamworth, to the Farrer Agricultural High School down there, and I was left there by Mum and Dad, and actually Robert, the other Robert, drove down because of the distance involved in those days of going down, and after enrolling me, away they went back, and I was suddenly, I think it took a day or two for me to realise just what a formidable situation I was in. Firstly, I didn't understand the system whereby first years are the absolute dregs of society. The school was just getting out of a phase of absolutely dreadful treatment of a ranking system up through the school, but the new headmaster was out to change that as fast as he could, but it was rather difficult changing the culture of the school.
What was it called then? Was it ragging?
I forget what it was. But fortunately, I had read the book Dr. Uncle Tom, not Uncle Tom, but Tom's School Days, but at Rugby School in England, and that gave me a little bit of a warning of what it was going to be like. And and of course Tamworth, the countryside and climate and everything's totally different to the northern rivers of New South Wales and farming systems, and the boys that are attended there, most of them are from throughout the New England area. All of them were, many of them were very good at sport, could play tennis and cricket very well and knew all the rules. And yeah, he was me from a little, really bumpkin country school, Glengarry. Only ever played cricket with a tennis ball, and yeah, I just had no idea. I had some big shocks to adjust, and did get, I might say, pretty frightfully homesick, and made worse by the fact, because I was so far from home, I couldn't get home any weekend until Easter time, and then we were able to get home very briefly over Easter.
How old were you when you went there?
Nearly 13 actually, so I wasn't that young, but it was a pretty traumatic time. But after a while I settled in pretty well and enjoyed the routine of dormitory and school life there, and well, I enjoyed it when I came home for holidays. I used to enjoy it back there too at school. But Farrah's, Max went there also, and both of us reminisce now that there were difficulties that have left us for the rest of our days. Both of us, and Max documents these things better than I do, chronicles it with other people, and apparently the days at Farrah have left a pretty big mark on people who've done that. They still have sorts of nightmares of life at Farrah, more in the academic field more than anything, and
the academics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the fear of not
the struggle with exams and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
what were the things that marked your experiences there?
Oh well, I suppose academic achievement. Yeah, because of I wasn't adept at sport. I didn't have the natural quick response time that good sportsmen have. I was good at athletics, particularly longer distance, 440 and mile cross country running. That was the type of thing that I did best at. But as for anyway.
Was it the pressure to perform academically? Was that what?
Yeah, well, I did very well at Farrah, probably overachieved in some way and studied far too hard, and that gave me excessive confidence in what natural ability I had.
Excessive confidence, did you say?
Excessive confidence, yes.
So,
excessive. I thought I could do anything. I didn't realise there were limitations in my comprehension of certain things, that there was some concepts and phases of learning and abstract thinking that it just wasn't. I realised later in my career I wasn't adept at when I compare that with other people who do have those skills, but otherwise, yeah.
What were were there negative aspects for you that you think have marked you long term, or that have affected you long term?
No, probably not. Well, the worst one was socially, because it was a boys only school, and just in the time when a person's becoming adult, learning to cope with your own sexuality and how you interact with members of the opposite sex and that type of thing. It was very difficult because you had so little contact with young ladies particularly, and as a consequence, I learned much later that Farrah boys didn't have the best reputation as far as women were concerned, that they were so socially inept.
So we have talked before about your university days, Dad, which leads into romance and meeting your wife. I know that talking about other romances could cause problems here, so maybe we should steer clear of those, unless you have anything you'd like to mention at this point.
Well, as I said in the previous talk, I was very socially inept. By the time I'd finished university, I was still socially inept because of my experiences for lack of experience, and mainly aiming to finish my study before I became too romantically involved with anybody. So my first appointment was to the Darling Downs based in Toowoomba, and of course went to the Central Adventist Church up there, and there was a few young ladies, but one young woman came to my attention that seemed to tick a few boxes as far as I was concerned.
What boxes were they?
Well, I suppose she was a very good-looking young lady, but also she came off a farm, and she had farming background. And there was a bit of a hiccup in getting to know her, mainly because, well, firstly because of my social ineptness, but then me being too slow, another young man stepped in and courted her for a while, but that didn't work out, fortunately. And,
Who was that?
Oh, a young fellow by the name of David. I just can't.
That's all right.
David Major, that was it.
There we
David
go.
Major,
I have
and
that.
he drove a Peugeot.
Yeah.
And the Lindsay and Lenny used to call it the Piggy-Yacht.
The Piggy-Yacht Man.
The Piggy-Yacht Man, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, after a few months, he got short shrift, and the way was clear for me to make a move, and that I did after about 15 months, and about 3 months after I was going to her, I was proposing, so I didn't muck about, you know. Yeah.
How did you know so quickly?
Eh?
How did you know so quickly? Once you got your...
I don't know, I suppose just we seem to click pretty well, and got on very well. We seem to have a very similar interest, and mainly are interested in farm and rural life and that sort of thing. Both come from both the elders of a fairly large, moderate-sized family and that type of thing. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how it all started.
And so you lived in Toowoomba
So
at first? Or?
yeah, we lived in Toowoomba for a few years, and then we got Diane was born in the first couple of years after we were married, and then we moved to North Queensland. We held off having another child until we settled in North Queensland, and Brahma was born, and then after that, of course, Lyndall in 1978, after we came back from North Queensland. And then we spent 26 years in Warwick. Took us up to about the year 2000.
Yeah.
Pop died and left half the property down here at Nimbin at Stony Shoot to manage, and so I decided to take early retirement at 60, and we've been down here now for some 16 years. Been a very happy time on the farm overall. I certainly enjoyed the environment and change of lifestyle of working with cattle instead of crops, but never made any money out of it, of course. Well, with the rural enterprise, if we made any money at all, it's mainly through capital appreciation and the rising value of property down here, land down here since we've been here. So yeah, it's been really enjoyable.
Who's that?
Oh, your judge is really grumpy.
Don't run.
They're doing the race.
Are they doing the
They're on the way to Bethlehem. So you're
boy?
I made a reservation and
Good boy.
Sorry, we're booked out. No room at the inn. Only in the manger.
my donkey and my wife need a place to stay because my
That's all we've got is in
That's
the
all
manger.
we've got?
I'm sorry.
gotta be politically correct, isn't it? No, it's gotta be she's a bit overwhelmed by the situation.
He's a bit of a scallywag,
Bit
that
of
one.
stage fright at the same time.
He's mischievous. He's a scallywag, aren't you?
Getting ready for the photo.
I don't need to wear that hat in there.
We actually have a picture of Mama photo was all us doing the nativity. You remember that captain with the beautiful Mary? I think it was one of the shepherds in Mama's lounge room.
Mama.
No, this is much more upmarket.
More authentic.
And that's $10 per ticket for this one, guys. I can
Cough
afford
up.
your cash. I don't take F-boss.